These are the brain lobes, and these are their functions. By the end of this video, you'll have a great idea of what the brain lobes are, and you'll be able to impress your neuroscience friends, and who knows, maybe it'll come in handy at trivia night at the pub, if that's still a thing. So again, this is the brain. Let's look at the first lobe. It's near the front of the head, where your eyes, nose, mouth, and ears are. This is called the frontal lobe. But wait, why are they called lobes? To be completely honest, I didn't quite know myself, so I had to look it up. That's what you do when you're a scientist. You don't know something, you look it up. And so I went to etymology.com and I got this as my answer. Let's see, late Latin, lobus, which is hull, husk, pod, perhaps related to Greek laborus, husk of fruits. So lobe basically means rounded, protruding part. And so the brain is made up of multiple rounded, protruding parts. Hence, several brain lobes make up the brain. And each of these rounded, protruding parts is associated with certain functions. And another aside, but saying rounded, protruding part so often reminds me of that episode of SpongeBob where it's just like,
rounded, protruding part. It was an Alaskan bullworm!
the rounded, protruding part. This makes sense now, so let's move on. Let's take it back to the front. Frontal lobe is in front of the body, and that region is right here. It's the top area. This lobe is associated with voluntary movement, reasoning, behavior, memory, personality, planning, decision-making, judgment, initiative, inhibition, mood. It's associated with higher functions, and some say this is the region that makes us distinctively human. So if you're a non-human watching this, I'm sorry to say you probably don't have as good of a frontal lobe as I do. The next lobe that I want to touch is the parietal lobe. Remember this from the beginning of the video? This is the parietal lobe. It's behind the frontal lobe and just above the occipital lobe, which we'll see later. Parietal's origin is Latin in reference to paries. I might be mispronouncing that, but it's a wall of a building which became parietalis, meaning of walls. So you go from wall of a building to it's something made of walls. And so parietal suggests it's a wall, but more on that later.
This is great. Just the three of us. You, me, and this brick wall you built between us.
Oh, and in this video, I'm specifically avoiding the actual directional terms like anterior, posterior, rostral, caudal. And I'm doing that because I want this to be a very simple, high-level understanding. Nothing too complicated. I'll probably post another video on brain navigation, treating it like you're the map in Dora, and if I do, I'll link it in the description. Make sure that you're subscribed so you don't miss it. I'll wait. You done? Good. So parietal lobe is this lobe right here, and it does a bunch of things, particularly language, reading, the ability to perceive sensations. So this lobe is associated with that integration of spatial senses. If you consider it a highly advanced machine, will have so many different sensors and metrics. The machine then has to make sense of this data to know what to do with it. The changes in accelerometer readings on a smartwatch will be interpreted by the machine as, oh, maybe this person is taking a couple of steps now. Similarly, our parietal lobes take information and enable us to do things such as tell what right is and what left is, and so much more beyond that. And yes, if you were wondering, earlier I did drop a pun. So the next lobe that I want to touch is the parietal lobe. The temporal lobe is here, and it houses the auditory cortex, among other things. And this specific lobe is associated with audio perception. Overall, this region is responsible for hearing, vision, smell, memory, behavior, speech, and emotions. This lobe is the occipital lobe. The occipital lobe is associated with vision, not that vision, or that vision. They help process images, and if this region is damaged, then a person will have issues with their ability to see things. I think at this point I should also reveal that I've been keeping something from you guys. I've been withholding some information. I've been explaining each lobe and its name, and I've been going into the etymology and all that stuff. But there's one thing that's particularly interesting that I feel that you should know. The brain regions themselves match up with the bones of the skull that is just over them. So if you got the parietal bone, that's going to be just over the parietal region. So if you know the bones and you know the naming of the bones in the skull, then you can make some pretty educated guesses as to what lobe you're looking at. If we look at the back of the skull, the Latin phrase for back of the skull is occiput, and the word may have come together from ob, meaning against, and caput, meaning head. So look at the skull, look at the back of the skull. You know how in movies, to knock someone out cold, a character will just whack someone in the back of the head? Well, when they do that, they're striking the occipital bone. And this is a good way to remember that. This is the occipital lobe, and it's associated with vision, because once you hit someone on the back of the head in these cartoons, you're knocking them out, so that takes out their vision and consciousness. So those are the major lobes and their functions, and we walk through all of them together. So when I was initially making this video, I had written up 4 brain lobes, and those were the major ones that I felt were really important. And so I didn't think that there were more lobes to consider, but actually,
no, there is another.
There is another. We're going to talk about it in the next video. You'll get your bonus lobe video if it's already recorded and I posted it. The link will be in the description. See you then.